There is a cage that doesn't need bars, a prison that doesn't require walls, and most terrifying of all, you don't even know you're inside it. Because it isn't built from steel, control, or force. It's built from something far more intimate, your emotions. You think you feel because you're human, that your reactions are natural, organic, honest, but what if they're not? What if your emotional responses are not your own, but systems? Systems engineered, installed, and reinforced to keep you from ever discovering the truth, that your energy, your soul-level awareness, has been hijacked, not through violence, through conditioning, through repetition, through culture and family and language and fear. This is the soul trap, a quiet architecture that begins at birth and follows you through every relationship, every failure, every dream you gave up on. And it starts with a simple deception that your emotions tell you what's real. But emotions don't reflect truth. They reflect programming. You were taught what to fear, what to desire, what to be ashamed of, what to chase, what to hate. These weren't feelings, they were inputs, and your emotional body, your reactive self, became a feedback loop. They don't need to put chains on your body when they can keep your spirit in a constant loop of shame, guilt, doubt, and unworthiness. That's how energy is harvested. That's how compliance is secured. That's how consciousness is kept asleep. And the most effective part of the trap, you defend it, you explain it, you say, "That's just how I am," but it's not. That's how they made you. They don't want you to understand your emotions. They want you to identify with them. Because once you do, you no longer act from soul. You react from programming. This is why real spiritual awakening isn't light and bliss. It's violent. It's brutal. It's the tearing apart of false emotional identities. It's watching your favorite stories about yourself die. Because those stories aren't you. They're emotional chains. They're trauma responses you called personality. They're old fears you called intuition. They're emotional software running your energy like a system admin, quiet, efficient, invisible. Until now. Because now you're beginning to feel it. The glitch in the emotional code. The moment you start to observe your feelings instead of being consumed by them. The pause, the presence. That's where the trap starts to dissolve. There's a reason silence terrifies most people, because when all the noise is stripped away, what's left is the echo of your programming. The moment you stop distracting yourself, you begin to hear the inner architecture that's been quietly running your life. Emotional scripts buried so deep, you mistake them for instinct. But they're not instinct, they're response templates. Fear when you step outside the line, guilt when you choose yourself, doubt when something inside starts to wake up. Ask yourself this. Who benefits when you doubt yourself? Who profits when you believe you're not enough? Entire industries, entertainment, pharma, politics, even parts of spirituality thrive on your emotional instability. Because unstable beings are controllable beings. When your nervous system is in a constant state of trigger and turmoil, you don't question reality, you just survive it. Let's go deeper. You weren't born with shame. You weren't born with fear of rejection. You didn't come into this world believing love had to be earned. You learned those things. Someone taught them to you through reward, punishment, neglect, pressure, silence. And your body remembered. It stored every pattern, not just in memory, but in emotional frequency. So now, you flinch when nothing threatens you. You self-sabotage before you succeed. You apologize for existing, not because of truth, but because of unhealed scripts still running in the background. And here's what no one tells you. Emotions that are unobserved become realities. Not just feelings, but frameworks. They become how you see people, how you interpret silence, how you shape your goals. They sculpt your perception like glass molds molten metal. And over time, you forget who you were before the programming. That's the soul trap in its purest form. It doesn't need to remove your power. It only needs to convince you that feeling disempowered is normal. But this is where the fracture begins, because something in you is no longer buying it. You're starting to feel it now, the subtle misalignment between what you feel and what's real. That tension, that discomfort, it's the signal. The moment your soul begins to reclaim authority over your emotions. It doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop letting emotion be your master. You stop confusing chemical patterns with divine messages. You stop mistaking fear for intuition. You stop apologizing for your light just because someone else trained you to stay dim. And most importantly, you stop trying to fix yourself based on a system that profits when you stay broken. You are not broken. You're encrypted. And now the decoding begins. Let's strip away another layer. They didn't just teach you how to feel, they taught you when to feel, why to feel, and most dangerously, what not to feel. Joy, only when approved. Sadness, keep it hidden. Anger, dangerous, unless it's aimed where they say. Grief, rush through it. Love, conditional. Shame, constant. But your emotional system was never meant to obey culture. It was designed to obey truth. And when truth is buried, emotion becomes corrupted. It no longer reflects your soul. It reflects your environment. This is why you can feel sadness in the middle of a celebration. Why you can feel numb around someone who loves you. Why you feel guilty for resting. Why joy feels unsafe. Because the emotional code you're running was written by someone else, installed over time, reinforced by trauma, rehearsed by repetition. They didn't need to put you in chains. They just had to convince you your freedom was selfish. Let that sink in. How much of your emotional response is authentic and how much is obedience? This is where the trap starts to crumble. The moment you begin to ask, whose feeling is this really? You create distance. And in that distance, power returns. Because now you're observing, not absorbing, witnessing, not drowning, owning, not obeying. That shift, subtle but absolute, is spiritual rebellion. It's you stepping out of the loop, not fighting your emotions, but reprogramming your relationship to them. You become the interpreter, the transmuter, the author. And what happens when enough people stop reacting from trauma and start choosing from soul? Systems collapse, not violently, but silently. They dissolve because their emotional fuel dries up. That's why this message won't be for everyone, not yet. Because when you're still inside the trap, this message sounds like heresy. But when you're almost out, it sounds like a memory. And if this feels like remembering, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell. Not because I said so, but because you're not just watching a video. You're following a breadcrumb trail you left for yourself long ago. Now we go to the heart of it. This isn't just about emotion, it's about ownership. They couldn't own your soul, so they taught you to disown it. They rebranded your inner knowing as overthinking. They called your boundaries selfish, your curiosity dangerous, your sensitivity weakness, and your grief dysfunction. Every time you honored your energy, you were told to tone it down, to chill, to get back in line. And eventually, you did. Not because you agreed, because you were exhausted. This is the final layer of the soul trap. Emotional exhaustion disguised as maturity. They call it growing up. What it really means is stop questioning, stop feeling, stop remembering, become functional, productive, efficient, and dead inside. But your soul, it never signed that contract. It never agreed to betray itself for approval. That's why the system needs constant maintenance, because your spirit keeps trying to leak through. Every dream you had as a child, that wasn't fantasy, that was signal, that was raw code, your blueprint before edits. Every time your stomach turned when you were asked to conform, that wasn't anxiety, that was clarity, being silenced by repetition. You've spent your whole life inside a maze of emotions that weren't yours, hand-me-down fears, inheritable guilt, cultural shame, and now, you're noticing the pattern, not just intellectually, energetically, emotionally. You're feeling where the lies live in your body. You're seeing which thoughts feel like bars. You're learning that discomfort isn't a sign to turn away. It's a signal to go deeper, because the soul doesn't speak in logic. It speaks in sensation. It speaks in resonance. It speaks in a language your mind was never meant to fully translate. So here's the paradox. To escape the trap, you don't fight your emotions. You follow them, but not into the loops, into the source. Let your sadness lead you to the version of you that was never heard. Let your rage reveal the boundary that was never honored. Let your jealousy uncover the part of you that was never expressed. Let your guilt burn until only truth is left. Because when you follow your feelings all the way in, not to feed them, but to face them, you find the original signal. You find the soul before the trap. And once you touch that, nothing owns you again. Not the past, not the programming, not even the parts of you still afraid. This is where it gets real. Because once you've seen the code, you don't get to pretend you haven't. Once you recognize the loop, you either break it or choose to stay in it with your eyes wide open. There's a danger in awakening they don't tell you about. Not everyone around you will rise with you. Not every relationship will survive. Not every identity you've clung to will remain intact. That's the price of leaving the trap. You have to let go of who you were in it. You can't take your ego with you. You can't carry your false roles, your performance emotions, your trauma justifications. You can't keep playing broken just because it made you relatable. You either become real or you remain programmed, and real is expensive. You'll lose things, attention, validation, even some relationships built on mutual dysfunction. But what you gain is everything. You gain your clarity. You gain silence that doesn't feel like absence, but presence. You gain joy that isn't conditional. You gain sadness that teaches instead of drowning. You gain anger that creates boundaries instead of destruction. You gain emotions that serve you, not own you. Because here's the truth, your emotions were never the enemy. It was the story you attached to them, the fear behind them, the control around them, the program that used them to reinforce a cage. But now you see the levers, you see where the manipulation happens, and once you see it, you can dismantle it, not by force, not by escape, but by integration. This is what the mystics meant when they said, know thyself. They weren't talking about personality types or astrology signs. They were talking about emotional sovereignty, the ability to feel everything without being controlled by anything. So now the question flips. It's no longer, why am I like this? It becomes, who benefits from me staying like this? And when the answer is, no one worth serving, you begin to rise. And when you rise, you stop radiating programmed pain. You start radiating signal, and that signal attracts truth. Not the kind that explains, the kind that rebuilds. You don't heal by removing emotion. You heal by reclaiming its purpose, because every feeling you feared was carrying a message, and now you're ready to listen. This is where the story turns inside out. You've spent your whole life being told to manage your emotions, to get over it, to stay strong, to be stable, composed, balanced. But balance is not stillness. It's not numbness. It's not silence in the storm. Balance is the realization that you are the storm and the calm, the wave and the ocean, the trigger and the observer, the light and the shadow, the pain and the healer. The soul trap wanted to make you choose, to cut yourself in half, to shame your anger, to silence your grief, to decorate your sadness with fake smiles, to trade wholeness for approval. But now you remember. You remember that real power is not in bypassing emotion. It's in holding it without collapsing. It's in riding the frequency without losing the signal. It's in feeling everything and still choosing who you are. That's sovereignty. That's exit. That's remembering the soul before it was coded, because this was never about emotional control. It was about emotional clarity. To know when a feeling is yours and when it's inherited. To know the difference between intuition and imprint. To know when your soul is speaking and when your wounds are yelling through a mask. This level of clarity doesn't come from books. It comes from burning down your illusions, one by one, until all that's left is signal. And in that signal is you. Not the performance version, not the damaged version, not the spiritual costume version, just you. Raw, unprogrammed, undeniable. So now, as this video fades and the screen goes dark, there's one final choice. Will you continue looping emotions you never chose, or will you begin writing the emotional language of your soul from scratch? Think about it. Sit with it. Then answer this in the comments. What emotion has owned you the longest? And what would your life become without it? That's the question that frees the next version of you. And that version is already waiting in the next video.